Coffee drinkers, listen up. In this video, I will share the most important things for you to know to get the most possible benefits from your cup of joe or multiple cups, as well as how to extend the effects, how to reduce some of the side effects, and how to make sure you're in the subgroup of coffee drinkers that's actually having a net health benefit rather than a net harm. The first thing to note is that there's tremendous variability in the way people metabolize and process caffeine. Some are genetically very sensitive and or take a very long time to process their caffeine. And if that's you, you may want to ditch the caffeine altogether and look into a similar molecule called paraxanthine. That's a great alternative that has all the benefits of caffeine without the downsides. There's also the related T-creen, and there's even dynamine if you're looking for another natural stimulant that has pretty good effects and minimal to no downsides. So the very first thing to do is to make sure that caffeine agrees with your biology. If not, no problem, you can look to the alternatives. You can also use an adaptogenic mushroom drink. These often contain things like lion's mane or cordyceps or chaga, and they are jam-packed full of antioxidants and other beneficial compounds, but with zero or very low caffeine. You can even use cacao tea, which gets you some of the theobromine and other active ingredients within coffee and particularly chocolate without the same caffeine load. Next, the main constituents found within coffee that yield most of the health benefits belong to a family called polyphenols. Now, these are special plant defense compounds that help the coffee bean survive, yet when humans consume them, they feed our gut microbiome, causing the so-called good bacteria to flourish and to thrive and helping eradicate some of the pathogenic or less favorable microbes. So no matter your coffee drink, you want to make sure you're getting the highest polyphenol content possible, and that happens through consuming specifically organic coffee. That's because organic coffee beans and organic plants in general undergo more stress, and through this xenohormesis, they produce higher levels of phytochemicals, the beneficial compounds in plants and shrubs and other botanicals that ultimately confer health benefits to us humans. So you want to choose an organic blend to get the highest polyphenol content and thus the greatest health benefits. But you'll also want to choose something that was roasted more recently, because with time and exposure to heat and temperature and light, all of these degrade the nutritional content, the polyphenols found within coffee beans. So you want to find something that was freshly roasted, and then ideally you'll buy whole beans. And although it's convenient to buy it pre-ground, as soon as you grind, you increase the surface area of all the beans, and that oxidizes much faster, meaning that the levels of phytochemicals decrease much more rapidly. Plus, you can actually taste the difference if you have them side by side. For an example, try grinding some beans, leaving them out for 2 weeks, and then try it right alongside some freshly ground coffee. You'll certainly notice a difference. When you're storing your coffee, you'll want to make sure it's in an airtight container, ideally out of direct light, direct heat, just to make sure that it's staying as fresh as possible. The other major benefit that I rarely hear talked about in terms of caffeine consumption outside of polyphenols is actually the bitter taste of black coffee. That's because, according to a lot of the ancient knowledge of the old health systems, each taste serves a purpose and supports particular organs. Bitter is very important for the liver, the gallbladder, bile flow, and detoxification. You need to actually taste the bitter, and if you mask it with, say, cream or sugar or any of these other additives, not only are you not getting the benefits of actually tasting bitter like that, but also by adding dairy, you're actually neutralizing some of the polyphenols. The dairy binds to them and renders them less able to be utilized by microbes in the gut. Then we have the issue of preparation method. When you're preparing your coffee, there's all kinds of different ways of doing it. Drip coffee, French press, AeroPress, espresso, it goes on and on. But the most important thing is to make sure that the coffee and the hot water are never actually exposed to plastics, because then you'll end up consuming microplastics. And that's a video in itself, a whole nother issue. You want to avoid that if possible. There was a study that came out that showed drinking unfiltered coffee such as through a French press, would increase a biomarker of cholesterol called LDL. While that's true, the study looked at those consuming 5 to 6 cups of coffee, which is well beyond the therapeutic dose anyway, and they didn't differentiate between the subtypes of LDL to determine if it's actually problematic or not. Suffice to say, if you drink instant coffee, I'd reconsider. You can get a roasting setup like I have and roast your own beans. If you drink instant coffee, I would seriously reconsider. Not only is it far less healthy, but it usually has high levels of mycotoxins, chemical additives that you don't want in your body. And if you transition from clean, good, high quality coffee to instant coffee, you'll notice that it doesn't produce the same buzz, the same effects as the good stuff. If price is a concern, you can get your own roaster, which has an upfront cost of $100 to $300, and then you can get green coffee beans and roast them yourself. Now, when I roast my own coffee, it comes out up to about $5.50 per pound if I'm going for the really good stuff. If you're a decaf coffee drinker, look for either mountain water processed, which is abbreviated MWP, or Swiss water processed, which is abbreviated as SWP. As those names imply, those processes use water instead of harsh solvents and chemicals to decaffeinate the beans. Last thing I'll say is if you are a regular coffee drinker, meaning you drink it most days per week, it's a very good idea to take a tolerance break. I'm talking at least 10 days, preferably 14 days with no caffeine. And you can either wean off using the halving method, where you cut your intake in half each day until you're completely off, and then you start your 10 to 14 day timer, or you can just go cold turkey. I prefer the former, but what happens when you consume coffee every single day is your baseline actually shifts. Instead of being here normally, when you consume coffee regularly, your baseline decreases, and when you drink coffee, it just brings you back up to your baseline. So you actually spend a lot of your time living under your baseline with less energy, less motivation, less concentration. I know it sounds awful, but by day 4 or 5 of the caffeine tolerance reset, you'll actually experience a pretty significant shift in terms of energy, mood, and feeling overall good. If you want to explore this further, I'll put a link to an article I wrote in the show notes below that really explains how to make the whole caffeine tolerance reset, or really any stimulant tolerance reset, that much easier, and how we can use some of the tools afforded by modern science to make the process easier and actually more effective too. That way, when you come back to drinking coffee, each cup will feel like it was your first cup, and those benefits that you used to feel many years back will come right back, and you'll experience a newfound appreciation and enjoyment of caffeine. If you've made it this far, you are a badass. Comment 1% below so I know who you are. And until next time, be an outlier.